CNN started out as the first cable news network, which is actually what CNN stands for, when it was launched in 1980 by entrepreneur Ted Turner. Back then, it was revolutionary and changed the entire news industry by rapidly deploying correspondents anywhere around the world and covering breaking news as it happened. But today, CNN is a shell of its former self and a complete embarrassment to the entire news business. Everybody obviously knows that as the 2016 election approached, CNN's coverage got more biased and more absurd by the day, and after Trump won, they completely went off the rails and lost any resemblance to a news network whatsoever. But CNN's fake news problem dates back before Trump. One of the prime examples is them perpetuating the hands up, don't shoot hoax, which largely gave rise to the Black Lives Matter movement. The saying was falsely attributed to Michael Brown, the 6'4", 300-pound thug who robbed a convenience store before attacking a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri in 2014, resulting in him being shot and killed. After covering the riots one night, host Sally Cohn concluded her show saying that the network wants the protesters, the rioters, to know that they support them, and then she and her three other panelists all held up their hands in solidarity with the protesters who had adopted the gesture as a symbol of their cause. After the investigation into the shooting of Michael Brown was complete, even some of the most liberal of news outlets admitted that the claim that he had his hands up when he was shot was false, and the narrative was ranked one of the biggest lies of the year, even by the far-left Washington Post. The damage had long been done, though. Hands up, don't shoot had become the rallying cry of Black Lives Matter, and the slogan was printed on signs at protests and on people's t-shirts, and the lie that Michael Brown was an innocent victim, murdered by a racist police force, had taken root. Milwaukee Sheriff David Clark would later say that fake news was born in Ferguson when the liberal media propagated the hands up, don't shoot lie, but sadly, so many Americans have forgot, so I'm just here to remind you. Of course, everyone knows that CNN said that we weren't allowed to read Hillary's emails that WikiLeaks published, only the media was allowed to read them. Project Veritas caught Van Jones on camera admitting the Russia conspiracy theories were fake news, but CNN ran them every day anyway. They obviously hate white people, and some may even remember when Reza Aslan ate human brains on air, but I want to go back further into the past. CNN's chief war correspondent, Christiane Amanpour, admitted that reporters were self-censoring themselves in their coverage of the build-up to and during the Iraq War, and when looking back on the events, said that they weren't rigorous enough, they didn't ask the right questions, and later characterized the Bush administration's lies for going into war as disinformation at the highest levels. Disinformation that CNN gladly repeated, like the Operation Mockingbird assets that they are. Eason Jordan, who was their former chief news executive, later admitted that before the Iraq War, CNN was censoring stories about atrocities Saddam Hussein and his sons had committed because the network didn't want their Iraqi CNN affiliates to face repercussions by the regime. Just after the Iraq War started in 2003, he wrote an op-ed for the New York Times titled "The News We Kept to Ourselves," and tried to justify keeping various atrocities he knew of secret because he claimed revealing them would have jeopardized the lives of Iraqis who worked on CNN's Baghdad staff. He also said that some of the events he knew about still haunt him, so at least he was able to retain part of his conscience. Former CNN reporter Peter Collins, who was in Baghdad during the buildup to the first Gulf War, said that he was with Eason Jordan and CNN's president at the time, Tom Johnson, during meetings with Iraqi officials where they were hoping to get an interview with Saddam Hussein. And Collins later revealed that he was astonished from both the tone and the content of those conversations because it seemed to him that CNN was groveling for the interview. And a few months later, he wrote an op-ed for the Washington Times about his experience titled "Corruption at CNN," where he said that he felt CNN was broadcasting Saddam Hussein's propaganda for him in hopes of getting an exclusive interview with him, but they ended up getting scooped by CBS. He said he thought long and hard about whether he could be comfortable with a supposed news organization that played those kinds of games and decided that he couldn't, and resigned. These aren't the only startling allegations of this kind. In 2012, former CNN journalist Amber Lyon went public with her experience working for the network, giving details of more clear examples of them catering to dictatorships, saying that what CNN was doing in Bahrain at the time was essentially creating infomercials for dictators, and they were violating every principle of journalistic ethics.
We're supposed to be watchdogs on these governments. We're not supposed to allow them to be paying customers as journalists. And that's the issue here, is that CNN is feeding then this propaganda to the public and not fairly disclosing to the public that this is sponsored content.
Well, wait until she finds out about Operation Mockingbird and the CIA's secret relationship with the mainstream media. We all remember how President Trump famously pushed back against their odd and obsessive attacks shortly after the 2016 election, telling Jim Acosta that CNN is fake news, which caused the label to stick. But with their reputation in shambles, CNN's president at the time, Jeff Zucker, said that he felt that the network's credibility was higher than ever. Of course, the overarching theme of their coverage as the election approached was that Hillary's victory was inevitable. Exposing the fake news from CNN would take a 24-hour news network in and of itself, but their evil goes far beyond inciting violence against Trump supporters and white people. And like I said, they've cozied up to dictatorships in foreign countries, hoping to get interviews to further CNN's business interest in certain countries. Just a few weeks before the 2016 election, when Trump was warning about possible hacking of electronic voting machines, CNN ran a story titled, "No, the presidential election can't be hacked," and dismissed Trump's concerns. But right after Hillary's devastating loss, they published this story with the headline, "Where's the outrage over Russia's hack of the U.S. election?" During one of their endless paranoid rants about their conspiracy theories regarding the Trump campaign colluding with the Russians to steal the election from Hillary, they used B-roll from a video game called Fallout 4 in a segment about Russian hackers. They literally used a clip from a video game during a supposed news story. CNN contributor Bob Baer actually wanted an election do-over, and their senior media analyst, who sadly has been fired, Brian Stelter, said that it was a national emergency once Trump was inaugurated, and said that it felt like a dictator had just seized power. Then later that day, when it was learned that President Trump picked Frank Sinatra's My Way for the first dance at the presidential inaugural ball, CNN reported that Sinatra's daughter, Nancy, was upset that he was using her father's song. She then responded on Twitter saying that wasn't true, she never said that, and CNN was lying as usual. As long as CNN is on the air, they're lying. And like I said, it would be a full-time job to debunk the lies they spew, because that's all they do. They're deceptive in virtually every possible way, from lying by omission to even changing the color of Joe Rogan's skin after he revealed that he contracted the coronavirus and his doctor was treating him in a way that the liberal orthodoxy didn't approve of because it undermined confidence in their mandatory vaccine agenda. For many years, I've been debunking fake news and exposing the mechanisms that work behind the scenes of the liberal media industrial complex. So if you want to learn more, order my book, The True Story of Fake News, How Mainstream Media Manipulates Millions, in paperback from Amazon.com, or download the ebook from Kindle, iBooks, Nook, or Google Play. My books are a lot more serious and in-depth than my videos, but if you like watching my serious monologues like this, then you'll love reading my books. So head on over to Amazon.com or click the link in the description below and check them out.